with great pleasure that I am going to introduce Bessy Reyna. We're so glad to have her here in Guilford. She's very well known for her poetry, both in English and in Spanish. And she has read all over. She has been a featured reader at the Sunken Garden Poetry Festival in Farmington. And she's also read at international festivals in El Salvador, Cuba, and Nicaragua. She is the author of 2 bilingual books of poetry, Battlefield of Your Body, and Memoirs of the Unfaithful Lover, Memoirs de la Amante Infidel, sorry. Her poetry can be found in numerous anthologies, including El Coro, a chorus of Latino and Latina poetry, Martin Espada, editor. In Other Words, Literature by Latinas of the United States, Roberta Fernandez, editor. The Wild Good, Bea Gates, editor. Bessy is a contributor to the Gathered Light, the poetry of Joni Mitchell's songs, Lisa and John Stormberger, editors. Bessy's story, So That You Will Hear Me, was nominated for a Pushcart Prize. Her poetry has been featured in Spotlight for the Arts with Ed Becky, a segment of All Things Connecticut. Born in Cuba and raised in Panama, Bessy is a graduate of Mount Holyoke College. And then she went on to not only earn a master's, but a law degree from the University of Connecticut. She is currently the arts and culture editor for the Hispanic newspaper Identidad Latina and the contributing columnist for www.connecticutlatinonews.com. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more, and so if you want to learn more about Bessy, her readings, her workshops, she's done a lot of workshops on memoirs, please visit her website. It's www.bessyreyna.com. It's a wonderful website.
Thank you.
So I'd like to conclude with a quote from Vivian Shipley, who is a professor at Southern Connecticut State University. She says of Bessy's poems, reward with their hard-won sweetness, with the taste that leaves you for wanting more. We're so happy to have you here to share your poetry with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I've been looking forward to being here more than you can imagine, because every one of my friends who ever read here couldn't say more nice things than they were just exuberant about how nice you all are. And the dinner's going to be wonderful, too. That was part of the...
You're going to check that off.
Yeah. So thank you really so much for inviting me, and all of you for being here tonight. I thought, since you're all such accomplished poets, I would play with you a little bit, and I'm going to do a theatrical reading. I'm going to do a reading in 3 parts, okay? The first part is going to be called 2 for the Price of 1. And that's going to have to do with poems that have to do with being bicultural, constantly. So I'd like to read you a quote from Richard Blanco. In an anthology that he wrote, he said, our works, Latino works, examine the complex ways in which memory, landscape, and imagination collide and intersect to form a sense of place. So I'd like to share with you some of my poems where that collision appears. Tropical lately. The sky looks tropical lately, she says casually, gazing at red and purple streaks framed by the car window. To my left, orange cones, I-84 narrows. I switch lanes and slow down enough to observe her bare shoulders, long black hair, sandals next to her feet. Her sadness makes me want to conjure an offering, have a wild orchid appear on her lap or between her soft, small breast. I catch a glimmer of the volcanoes and rainforest behind her eyes. Hear waves crash against her homeless heart. She rests her head on the car seat, glancing at clouds that yearn for a place to be. Beautiful, isn't it? Makes you almost homesick, doesn't it? Doesn't it? I whisper. There was a little restaurant in Hartford that I used to go to, and this poem takes place there, and it's called A Cup of Coffee. Of course, being Cuban, we drink coffee a lot. I think I started drinking coffee when I was like 6 years old or something. So, a cup of coffee. Watch me, I tell Rob, the lovely dark-haired friend who has joined me for lunch. Watch me, I'll have to pretend I don't know that the coffee is a gift from him. We dance the tango. Ricardo, the Argentinian man, is so happy to see me. It's been so long since I had lunch at his small place, hidden on the second floor of an old building. Rob and I sit by the window talking about books and watching the people below us as they stroll on Pratt Street. Ricardo whispers to me in a voice with the cadence of the pampas. ¿Quieres un café? Do you want a cup of coffee? I know I shouldn't. It would be one too many for the day, but I can taste the offer. That I want to give you something because I am so happy to see you, bursting behind a smile. We dance the tango. Watch me, I say to Rob. Now I have to pretend that I want to pay for the coffee, and he refused to take the money. The proper behavior, the warmth, generosity, the nostalgia that engulfs me now. In how many restaurants can you get free coffee just because the owner is happy to see you? A native language coming back to rescue me, transforming me, transporting me. At lunch, we dance the tango. I say goodbye to Rob, turn and give Ricardo gracias por el café before I descend the narrow wooden stairs that return me to another culture, my brave new world. Around the corner, a homeless man awaits. "Can I have a dime for a cup of coffee?" he asks. His voice startles me. I smile. "Come with me, I'll buy you a coffee." I tell him, pointing at coffee and pastry sign a few feet away. "No, not from there," he shouts annoyed. "From Dunkin' Donuts." Of course he doesn't want a cup of coffee. I place some quarters in his extended hand and walk away, smiling, dancing the tango, having paid for my coffee after all. The next poem has to do with something I saw as I was going to work in Hartford. And I don't know how many of you have seen bodegas. Latin bodegas are places where we all, go in for nostalgia, for food that we're used to. And I think every ethnic group has their own bodegas, I'm sure. And this one is I just saw this sugarcane and it just blew me away. So I had to write this poem because of that experience. And one thing that I noticed when I was translating for my book, which is in English and Spanish, is that I use clouds. I use clouds a lot in my poetry. And you'll see that in the clouds. You'll see the clouds in this poem too. It has a quote from Mary Oliver. Wherever I am, the world comes after me. A stick leaning by the front wall of the bodega, una caña, a sugar cane. What is she doing here, surrounded by cigarette butts and overripe tropical fruits, which by the look of them didn't survive the voyage? All of us converging thousands of miles from where we started, our distorted reflections staring from sections of glass not yet covered with flyers for Café Bustelo and laundry detergents on sale. These fruits, this sugar cane, me. What are we doing in this corner of Broad Street? How long will it take before we start conjuring tropical breezes and looking for the tormented clouds of our islands? San Luis Oriente, the small Cuban town where I learned to say caña, to taste it, to want more. Childhood games, pure, delicious, like the sugar cane we stole from the trains loaded at the Central Union. Boy heroes fighting to be the ones to release the canes. I want to grab that sugar cane on Broad Street, dance with her, run backwards. Come, taste me, I hear her whispering. Soy tan dulce. Yes, I must taste her again. Esta caña tan dulce. I want to have her now as I did then. She wants me to unveil her, to make her mine in the middle of the street. I close my lips around the meat while she promises to take me back, to be tan dulce, like the afternoons in San Luis, when the only thing that mattered in our world was the sound of the train enticing us. Sígueme, sígueme, sígueme. Follow me, follow me, follow me. Tengo caña tan dulce, tan dulce. When I came to this country, I had seen a sign that says scholarships to the United States. And I really wanted to study, and I didn't have money to pay for college. So I thought scholarship could be my way out. And it was. And Mount Holyoke was very generous. I had to teach Spanish as part of my exchange for my room and board tuition. And so I never went back to Panama for many reasons, but one time when I went back, I never had high school class reunions, you know, like people have here. I never had that. But one time I met a friend in Panama who had been in my school, and the two of us were talking. So this poem comes out of my conversation with a classmate from high school that I hadn't seen in 40 years or something. And it's called The Inhabitants of My Past. At first, I couldn't tell if the woman jaywalking, darting between cars towards the place we agreed to meet, was my classmate from elementary school, the one with whom I spent teenage afternoons looking for trouble, the same one who counted the days until our high school graduation. On the sidewalk, we called out names in unison, hesitantly. Decades of absence, class recognition. In the cafe, she tells me about her life, her grandchildren. She tells me about those we both knew, the girls, now women, who inhabit our past. She tells me that a classmate died run over by a car, and I think I should be careful crossing the street, just in case death wants to take another trophy from our school, our class. I smile and say yes when she mentions names to hide my uncertainty, not really knowing if the face that surges from my memory belongs to that name or to another whose existence I have long forgotten. She tells me about the lives I have missed, and I am happy to learn that the one whose eyeglasses I broke when we were kids married a millionaire. Thanks to her political connections. You know, she says softly, people say horrible things about the one who was always a tomboy. They say she's a lesbian. My friend speaks even lower, as if the syllables of the last word had dirtied her tongue. Ella, de verdad, that one? I have no idea. Can be married twice. Children. I respond, taken aback. The doubt now making circles in the air, like the spoon I am using to sweeten the coffee once again. My classmate continues to bring to light past events. And my papers are stuck. Okay. My classmate continues to bring to light past events. Remember the skinny one we called Red Stick? Can you imagine? Her son committed suicide. My old classmate chooses the names and events one by one with the same finesse she might use to select and unwrap an exquisite chocolate. All those lives hidden for 30 years, appearing one by one, like the colorful scarves magicians pull out of their hats. In front of me, she smiles, and her small eyes close, as if these memories, the unearthed past, has made her old. As if each year lived since then has filled an hourglass that sits floating inside the glass of lemonade she draws close to her red lips. Now the second act 2 of this three-act play reading I'm doing for you is called Betrayal. Okay? And you're lucky I didn't write revenge. Nobody, apparently nobody, so revenge is really bad. So this is called Bowl with Blue Lotus Flowers. And before I have to tell you, I absolutely adore really good martial arts movie. Not like the Jackie Chan, but Jet Li, Bruce Lee, all those people, I just love them. I can get enough of them. So there's some reference here to a martial arts movie. Bowl with Blue Lotus Flowers. When the lovely white bowl with embossed blue lotus flowers began to slip off the kitchen counter, I wanted to rush and catch it in midair, like Yin Yu in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, when Yu Shu Lien, Michelle Yeoh, dropped a cup of tea to test her reflexes, but I wasn't fast enough. Give you a good price for the bowl, the Vietnamese lady told me the week she was closing her store. I used to go there, buy tea, imagine the flavors of the ready-to-go lunches she prepared and presented, her works of art wrapped in plastic like a Christo installation. I once saw a Chinese movie where a craftsman walked around a village offering to fix broken bowls. The camera, soon as his hands skillfully connected the pieces, filled the cracks with colors, making each bowl useful, beautiful again. I look at the fragments of lotus flowers on my kitchen floor, reminders of other things broken in my life, the friendships gone, the sharp edges of betrayals. I wish someone would come to my house, glue them back together again. This is a weird poem that I don't even know how it started, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. It's I don't cook. I hardly ever cook, but I have these kitchen poems. So, and I always say, if Susan didn't cook and go to the grocery store, we would be very skinny. So this is called In My Kitchen. I chop the ends of Brussels sprouts, removing the outer leaves, small, dark spots piling up on the counter in a vortex of whites and greens, swirling in front of me, like the dust, swirling from bombs exploded in faraway countries, where people run, holding their children in their arms, trying to escape the massacres. In my kitchen, the rejected leaves fall one by one into the garbage can, like a string of Tibetan fluttering prayer flags, prayers for peace gone unanswered. Now, I don't want to go over time. Are you keeping track? Somebody has to keep track. Okay, this was on the way from Managua to Granada to the International Festival. There was all this stuff happening, so I decided to take notes of what I was seeing. Che is here because, you know, the Sandinista government is communist, so they have to have Che and Chavez and all the icons. So Che is here wearing his famous black boina with a red star. He stares at me from a mural painted on the wall of a building. Hugo Chavez is here too. His profile, a metal sculpture illuminated with small light bulbs of many colors. Further down on this avenue, one-dimensional metal replicas of large trees are also illuminated by lights, giving the road a festive feeling. First Lady did that, the driver tells us, proudly pointing at them. Around the corner, the memory of a former boxing champion is also celebrated in a mural. The driver stops the van at the hotels, picks up the poets gathered for the festival in Nicaragua, as if picking up ripe fruit from a street vendor's basket. 3 women I met at the airport the night before climb in and greet me in French and Italian. At another stop, a poet from Slovenia greets us in English, the one from Peru in Spanish. And in this simple way, we start to learn each other's geographies. The world brought together to this small country by the love of poetry, to hear poems in languages we have never heard before and perhaps will never hear again. The van becomes a rotating world map, introducing us to a new country with each stop. Okay, 2 more of the betrayal parts. Seeing to the moon. There's a beautiful beach in Panama, outside Panama City, about an hour and a half, which used to belong to fishermen and now belongs to the condos and the rich people that did away with their land. To pass the time on the last night on their vacation, a mother, her daughter, and her friend lounged by the hotel's pool, admiring the moon's reflection on the water, like a luminous fish stopping by to tell them buenas noches. The mother said, "Let's sing songs about the moon," and started to sing an old Cuban bolero, Luna Lunera Cascabelera. When she finished, the friend began, "Blue moon, I saw you standing alone." The daughter waited, pretending that her memory was a jukebox with letters and numbers to be pushed in, humming one song, rejecting another. Finally, the daughter sang, "East of the sun and west of the moon." This went on till they each sang a different song at the same time, words in English and Spanish competing to be heard. For a while, their laughter erased the mistrust of the past, the pain they had inflicted on each other. Later, when they ran out of songs to sing and decided to go indoors to finish packing, they went to the rooms, unaware that the joyful intimacy they had shared was about to disappear, just like the moon at sunrise. Now I'm going to read you the title poem of my book, Memoirs of an Unfaithful Lover. And it has a quote from Marguerite Duras, who's one of my favorite fiction writers, story writers, from The Lover. And when she heard about the death of her brother, she wrote this: "At first it is incomprehensible, and then suddenly from all directions, from the ends of the earth, comes pain." 1. Shall I start at the beginning, with that night on a deserted beach when we sat quietly, listening to the ocean, holding each other, letting our lust unfold slowly at first, until your hands became like restless hummingbirds undressing me for the first time, while the tide came closer and closer, and the waves washed away our traces. Or should I start at the beginning, in the afternoon when I first saw you, reading a newspaper at her apartment, and I couldn't stop looking at your face. Your eyes were 3 continents merged, and we talked, drank coffee, and I said, let's go out for a ride, and drove you to the beach, without even asking if that was what you wanted. And you became so quiet, as if praying to the ocean. But I did not see the tears until you turned and asked me, how did you know I needed to come here? Should I start at the end, as I imagine it? You, alone, in Paris, in a hospital room. Who is the stranger whose hands touched your face for the last time? Who closed your eyelids? What is the sound of 2 hands clasping, becoming one, exploring the contours of an intimate universe? What is the sound of betrayal? What is the sound of abandonment? Engulf me with your rage, your hurt, but let me feel you once again, just for one instant. I will rip the earth open to return to the cities where you loved me. Come with me one more time to all those places, and this time it will not rain at Stonehenge at sunrise. And I will like Paris better, I promise. And we will pick up more pebbles at the beach in Etretat. A thief will not steal your wallet in New York City. Come, let's go listen to jazz in New Orleans, or walk quietly like we did in the autumn, while you absorb the colors of the maple trees before you learned of my deception. Your image, your hand, your voice. I hear your words inside of me. Amor, te quiero tanto. Ma petite, tu m'aimes beaucoup. How could you do this to me? Okay. Now we go for the 3rd act. The 3rd act is going to be about my family. And I have a couple of poems that I'd like to share with you, and then a few short prose pieces. And this one is called In Sickness and in Health. And this poem takes place in Panama City mostly. That's where my parents live. From this balcony, I used to wait for my friends to arrive, marvel at the bright red sunsets, dream about the lands I wish to know. Below, the streets are full of people. I hardly know this city, the open spaces of my youth transformed by tires and bulldozers. I am leaving in a month. That's all I said. No warning signals of my absence to those who plan my life behind my back. Education, marriage, children, in that order. When she returns, they murmured. When they got married, they promised to love one another in sickness and in health. When I was born, I made no such promise, but soon I learned their promise encompassed me. Now I look at them, health nowhere to be found. In the living room, I sit in his wheelchair, remembering the times when, riding on his shoulders, I learned about the streets of our hometown. He's now like a foreigner struggling with a new language. I tried to guess his needs. Was the last conversation we had the last one we will ever have? I want the Panama Canal, he stutters. I try not to laugh. Daddy, you couldn't fit it in this room, I say. He's insistent. Point the Panama Canal to me, I say. Is it here? I look at the objects cluttering the room, dusty memories of their lives together. His left arm is raised slowly, and he shows me a pillow. He used to fold the pillow for me, take my small fingers and close them into a tight fist. You have to learn how to defend yourself, to punch, hit the pillow, he commanded, while molding my skinny arms into position. Hit, defend yourself, he would say, as each punch was corrected and my 5-year-old arm became stronger. Years later, I learned that girls were not supposed to fight like that. He lays on the couch, unshaven, his wild hair uncombed. He used to be so proud of his appearance. His dead arm pulls him towards the floor like an anchor. Will we ever box again, I wonder? Hit, I command. He does not move. Hit, I command. He cannot move. I hold his swollen fingers, placing his arms over his chest, and let him rest. Okay. Now I'm going to give you this piece that I'm about to read. I'm really proud because it got accepted in the Patterson Literary Review. So it's called Dinner at Our House. Dinner at our house in Panama City was mandatory and was like entering a minefield and trying to cross it blindfolded. My brother and I never knew when a topic, the mention of a name, or discussion of a newspaper article would trigger my father's anger. The first explosive topic to be banned from the table was religion. On the holy day of the Ascension of the Virgin Mary, my brother and I started joking about the Virgin Mary being the first woman astronaut because her body went up directly from earth to heaven at the end of her life. Dad, a devout Catholic, became furious at our display of blasphemy and incensed that all the money he spent sending us to parochial schools had been wasted. After ordering us to leave the table, he forbade any talk of religion during meals. Our dinners were scripted like a play, where the actors take the stage in places assigned by the director. My mom, who cooked and served the meal, sat closest to the kitchen door. My brother and I sat facing each other, and Dad at the other end of the table. This table, which was too big for our tiny apartment, never welcomed any dinner guest. My Cuban mom was a great cook. I loved the luscious desserts she created with fruits, especially her dulce de toronja, candied grapefruit rinds, which require hours to make, and her cakes filled with natilla. Years later, long after I left home, after she stopped cooking because of a stroke, her Cuban-style arroz con pollo was by far the most delicious I would ever taste. But kibbeh, a dish of minced meat with cracked bulgur wheat and spices, a special recipe she learned from her Lebanese mother, was the dish which united the family like none other meal. My mother only made kibbeh when she was in a good mood. It didn't matter how much we begged her to cook it. When she finally relented, she had to make 3 different kinds because my brother liked his baked, my dad liked his fried, and Mom and I liked ours raw. Making kibbeh was always a big deal. To my mother, kibbeh symbolized a dark cave, a place she never wanted to go back into or remember. Making kibbeh was a lot of work because she had to go to the butcher shop by herself, make sure he gave her his very best piece of lamb, then she oversee him as he ground it to perfection. When she got home, she would unwrap the bundle, clean it, and prepare the meat by mixing it with cumin and other spices and the bulgur wheat. Then using her palms, she made perfectly round balls of the mixture. When she was finished cooking and preparing kibbeh, she would call us to the table where plates were neatly placed, and I waited for the raw one she and I would share. I liked the pink color of the meat, the hole she made in the center for the olive oil, the chunks of onions sitting on top, but mostly I loved the shot of whiskey I was allowed to drink when we shared kibbeh. Those rare times when she was willing to pull out a scrap from her memory, from when she still lived with her family in Cuba, and displayed it at the table. I often thought that making kibbeh was the only connection to her Lebanese parents that she allowed herself with us. Mom, the youngest, grew up speaking Spanish in Cuba. I often wonder how they communicated with each other, how much of their past was lost as my grandma Isabel traded her tunics for dresses. We never fought when we ate kibbeh. We simply enjoyed the flavors of food from those ancestors who were a mystery to us. The ones my mother never wanted to talk about, the ones who, like her, had left their country for another one far away in search of a paradise they never found, just like us. Okay, I'm going to do one more poem. No, two more. This poem, I was looking for a photograph I knew I had from when I was a little kid in Cuba, and I couldn't find it. So by then there was no one who could tell me. So I wrote this poem. She thinks of a photo. She thinks she was there once, a little girl with long blonde curls and no shirt. She thinks she stood next to a tall palm tree. She thinks there was a photo. At times, she can still see the beauty of the sky, clouds about to burst, the ocean in the distance. She thinks she was smiling, her face not yet printed with permanent frowns under passionate clouds. She wonders if it was a dream. Now there is no one left to tell her otherwise. Okay. I have another piece, a short piece.
Great.
I keep looking at the time because I don't want to run over time. This one is called One Last Present for My Mother. The front room at the crematorium was impersonal, with dark panels and a small desk by the front door. It looked more like any regular office than a place where families, some grieving, others in shock, would have to handle the business of disposing of a loved one's body. It was early in the morning, and according to Panamanian law, a family member had to identify the body before it was cremated. Waiting for us that morning was the director, a middle-aged, heavy-set woman who stood by the door to shake hands and offer us her condolences. As she led us through a narrow, mostly dark hallway, she began apologizing for the strong smell of incense in the room where our mother's body waited for us. Somewhat embarrassed, she explained that a Chinese family had held a ceremony in the room earlier, and, as is their custom, they burned a lot of incense. I found the aroma comforting. My brother and I stood in front of the casket, turned to the director waiting for us, and said, "Yes, this is our mother." I held in my hand a jade ring I had intended to place in the casket. This ring had been a joke between us. Years ago, we bought each other jade rings because the store owner told us that in China, it was good luck when someone gave you a jade present. We laughed as we exchanged identical rings at the store. Sorry. As I looked at my mother's face, I remember the story she told me about a Chinese man who lived in her town in Cuba. He was in love with her. when she was young. When Mom talked about his unrequited love, she imitated his Chinese accented Spanish. Like with so many people for whom Spanish is not a native language, her Chinese friend couldn't pronounce the letter R in Maria, her name. When he said it, it sounded like Malia. Tu son bonita, Malia, he would say when he wanted to tell her how pretty she was. I was happy for that memory of my mother as a desirable young woman, distracting me from the knowledge that I was standing in front of my 96-year-old mother for the last time. As if to break the tension, my brother remarked, how good a job the undertaker had done, because she looked like herself before the stroke. When I tried to place the ring on top of the casket, my brother stopped me. It could get lost, he said. The director instructed us to return in 4 hours, the time it would take for her ashes to cool enough to be placed in an urn. When we returned, she opened the urn for me. I placed the ring and its promise of good luck inside. Okay. And I have one last poem. And this is a poem dedicated to Havana from the time we went 2 years ago. It's called What We Left Behind. I don't know if you have seen pictures of Havana, of old Havana. It was an exquisite, exquisite city. The architecture, the workmanship of every building, just extraordinary. So this poem is What We Left Behind. Habana Vieja, you wait, like an elegant hostess yearning for the guest who sat at your dinner table. By now, the balcony where you all gathered to marvel at the Noche Cubana has fallen to the ground. The beauty of your past spread on the sidewalk like a shattered kaleidoscope. I left you antes de, before the, as the hotel staff described me, when they meant was before the revolution. Somehow, the date of my departure is like a baptism, cleansing me of the sin of having abandoned you. The bus carrying me to the city turns a corner, and I, who have been desperately searching for something from my past, recognize a fountain, the one with the dolphins, and shout, look, I used to play here. Suddenly I am 10 and not 70, and I can go back to the park whose name I have forgotten, put on my roller skates, lock them on my shoes, and rush fast to embrace the wind. When Tia Espe took us to the airport that day in April 1954, I was too young to understand that the past would become a colorless memory, the few black and white photos my mother brought with her. Inside the plane, I am transformed from Cuban citizen to a soon-to-be homeless immigrant child. Later on, my repressed Cuban identity would burst out when eating my mother's arroz con pollo or lechon asado, those flavors exploding in my mouth filled my heart. I became like a house in need of repair, disconnected from the family left behind. Imagining the cousins I would never meet, I asked my friend if I could borrow her grandmother and pretend she was mine. I had everything. I'm going to cry. And I had nothing, because you were always a yearning, a first kiss we can never forget.